John Marlowe dropped to his knees in the summer dust and pressed his fists against his eyes, making a sound no man wanted his children to hear. Inside the cabin, his 5 motherless little ones whispered a Father's Day plan he wasn't meant to know about. He'd worked double shifts 2 years straight to keep them fed and starve them of something worse. Welcome back, friends. If this story stirs your heart, please subscribe and stay with me to the very end. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I'd love to see how far this story travels. John Marlowe came home to a cabin that had stopped waiting for him. He knew it the moment his boots hit the porch. There was no smell of supper kept warm, no lamp burning low to greet him, no small voice calling out, "Daddy?" Just the silence that had moved into his house like a second wife and laid claim to every room. He stood at the door longer than a man ought to stand on his own porch. "Sarah," he said quietly. No answer. He pushed the door open with the toe of his boot. She was sitting at the table in her mother's chair, 12 years old and already wearing her grief like a Sunday dress. "You're late." "I know it." 3 hours late." "Sarah, I kept your plate warm till the fire died." He set his hat down on the bench by the door. He didn't trust himself to set it on the table. A man's hat at the table was for fathers. He wasn't sure he qualified anymore. "How were the little ones?" "Maggie cried for Mama again." He flinched. He couldn't help it. "Luke wet the bed. Liam said you weren't coming back. Jake said hush, you always come back, but Liam said that's only on the days you do come back. So I told them both to eat their beans and shut their mouths." She lifted her chin. "Was I wrong?" "No, darlin', you weren't wrong. Don't call me darlin'." Her voice didn't break. It was worse than if it had. "You ain't earned darlin' in a long while, Daddy." He sat down across from her because his legs wouldn't hold him standing. He pressed his palms flat against the wood. He tried to think of what Mary would have said. Mary had always known what to say. Mary had been the one who said the soft things. He'd been the one who worked. That had been the bargain. And then the fever had come last summer and taken her in 4 days, and the bargain hadn't held. "I worked the second shift over at the Bar M," he said. "Mr. Holloway needed extra hands, Brandon. The pay was—" "I don't care what the pay was." "Sarah." "I don't, Daddy. I don't care." Now her voice was breaking. "You've been working double shifts since the first frost. You've been working double shifts through Christmas, through Maggie's birthday, through the day Luke fell off the fence and I had to ride to town for the doctor my own self. I'm 12. I rode to town in the dark. I'm 12. I know." "You don't know. You ain't here to know." He couldn't argue. He'd been trying to argue with her for a year now, and every time he opened his mouth, she had the truth on her side. "I'm here now," he said. "You're a ghost now," Sarah said. "That's different." She got up from the table. She picked up the cold plate of beans and biscuit and walked to the stove and scraped it into the bucket they kept for the chickens. She didn't slam anything. That was what cut him deepest. She didn't slam anything because slamming would have been a child's anger. Sarah didn't have that left in her. "You'd best wash up," she said. "There's water in the basin. I drew it fresh 4 hours ago." He washed up. He didn't speak. He listened to the sounds of his children sleeping on the other side of the curtain. Mary had hung the year Liam was born. 4 small bodies breathing in the dark. He used to count them every night when he came home. He realized he hadn't counted them in months. "Sarah." She was banking the fire. She didn't turn around. "Tomorrow's Sunday," he said. "Yes, sir?" "I thought I'd take Jake out fishin'. The little ones too, if they want." She stopped moving. "What? Fishin'? Down at the creek? I thought—" "You promised that in March." "I know I did." "And in May." "I know." "And on Luke's birthday." He closed his eyes. He'd forgotten about Luke's birthday. "I mean it this time, Sarah." She turned around then, and she looked at him like a woman 3 times her age, and he understood for the first time that he had killed something in her. Not Mary's death. Mary's death had broken her. His absence had killed her. "All right, Daddy," she said. "I'll tell him in the morning." "Sarah." "I'll tell him?" she said again. Her voice was even. But if you break this one, I won't tell him the next one. I'll just stop telling him, Daddy. I'll just stop. She went behind the curtain to where the children slept. He stood by the basin a long time with the water dripping off his hands. He didn't sleep. He never slept much anymore. Sometime around midnight, he heard Maggie whimper in her bedroll, and he heard Sarah hush her. And he heard Sarah sing the song Mary used to sing low and slow, the one about the river going home. He pressed his fist against his mouth so they wouldn't hear him. The knock came at dawn. He hadn't slept, and he was already pulling his boots on when it came 3 sharp raps against the door, the kind of knock that didn't belong on a Sunday morning. He opened it. Cassidy stood there. Marlowe. Cassidy. You busy? It's Sunday. I know what day it is. Cassidy stepped past him into the cabin like he owned it. He'd been walking like that since they were boys together. Got coffee? No. You always got coffee. Not today. Cassidy looked at him then. Really looked. Cassidy was a hard man with hard eyes and the kind of mouth that had never apologized for anything in his life, but he wasn't stupid. He saw something in John's face, and he sat down at the table without being asked. All right, he said. I'll get to it. There's a drive. I ain't interested. You ain't heard me yet. I don't need to hear you. I ain't interested. 2,000 head, Texas to Sonora. John didn't answer. Mexico John, 3 months, maybe 4. I said no. $300. He felt it land. He couldn't help it. $300 was more than he'd made in the last 14 months put together. $300 was the doctor for whatever came next. $300 was Sarah's school books for 3 years. $300 was the fence he hadn't fixed, and the roof he hadn't patched, and the new boots Jake needed for winter. I said no, Cassidy. You're lying to me. I can see you doing it. Get out of my house. Cassidy didn't move. You got 5 mouths to feed, John. The little place ain't paying. The Bar M ain't paying enough. You're working yourself dead, and when you go down, them kids go to the county. You know what the county does with 5 orphans? Don't. They split 'em up. Boys to one farm, girls to another. Luke's young enough they might keep him with Maggie, but Sarah goes alone, and Jake goes alone, and Liam goes alone, and you'll never see any of them together again. Not ever. I said don't. 3 months, John. 4 at the worst. You come home with $300 and you set 'em up right. You buy more cattle. You hire a hand. You stop working double shifts. You're home at supper every night for the rest of your life. John stared at the table. Why me? Because you're the best cowman this side of the Brazos, and because I trust you, and because you need it. That's 3 reasons. You want a 4th? No. I'm offering a 4th anyway. You promised Mary you'd take care of those kids. This is how you do it. The name hit him. He hadn't expected the name. Cassidy had known Mary. Cassidy had been at the wedding. Cassidy had carried the coffin. That's a low thing to say, Cassidy. Yeah, Cassidy said. It is. I'm saying it anyway. The curtain moved. John saw it before Cassidy did, just the smallest flicker of cloth. He knew which child was behind it. He knew her shoulder, her hand, the line of her hair. He knew because she was always behind the curtain when she shouldn't be listening, gathering up the truth like a woman gathering eggs. Cassidy, we'll talk later. We'll talk now. Later. Cassidy looked. He saw the curtain. His face changed. Even Cassidy had that much in him. All right, he said. He stood. He picked up his hat. I leave Wednesday at first light. You meet me at the corral or you don't. Up to you, Marlowe. But you ain't got many choices left and we both know it. He stopped at the door. $300, John. He left. The cabin was quiet. The curtain didn't move. Sarah. Nothing. Sarah Marlowe, come out from there. She came out. She was in her nightdress, and her hair was down, and she'd been crying without making any noise, which was a thing he hadn't known a child could do until his children had taught him. Daddy? How much did you hear all of it? Sarah? All of it, Daddy. He held out his hand. He didn't know what he was offering with it. She didn't take it. Are you going? I'm thinking. That ain't a no. It ain't a yes either. It's 3 months, Daddy. Luke's gonna be 6 in 3 months. He won't know your face. He'll know my face, Sarah. He don't know it now. The words landed, and she watched them land, and she didn't take them back. I have to think on it. Don't think on it. Sarah. Don't, Daddy. Please don't. Please, please don't. He'd never heard her say please like that. Not once since Mary died. Sarah didn't ask for anything. Sarah told. Sarah managed. Sarah ran the household and ran her father and ran her 4 siblings and didn't ask. And now she was asking, and her voice was a child's voice for the first time in a year, and he couldn't bear it. Go back to bed, darlin'. Daddy. Go back to bed. She went. He sat at the table. He sat there a long time. When the sun came up, he heard them stirring behind the curtain. He heard Maggie giggle, which was a sound he hadn't heard in weeks. He heard Liam shush her. He heard Jake whisper something he couldn't catch, and Luke whisper back, and all of them whispering, planning, something, building, something. 4 small voices with Sarah's older one threading through them like a mother's. What are you children doing back there? He called. The whispering stopped. Nothing, Daddy, Sarah said. Sounds like something. Just talking. About what? A long pause. Father's Day, Maggie said. He heard the others hush her so loud it sounded like a snake. He felt his throat close. Father's Day. He'd forgotten Father's Day. It was next Sunday. He'd forgotten, and his children who had nothing. Who had no money, who had a father, who came home at midnight and left at dawn, his children were planning Father's Day for him. Y'all don't need to do nothing for Father's Day. Yes, we do, Maggie said. Hush, Maggie, Sarah said. But yes, we do. Sarah, you said, hush. He pressed his hands against the table. Children, come out here, please. They came out one by one, Luke first dragging his blanket, then Maggie with her bare feet and her tangled hair, then Liam, hands shoved into his pockets, like a man twice his age, then Jake, who looked at his father the way Jake had looked at him for the last 6 months, which was the way you looked at a stranger you couldn't quite decide whether to trust. Then Sarah last behind them all. Mornin', Daddy. Mornin'. He looked at them. 5 of them. 5 children. His children. Mary's children. I gotta tell y'all something. Sarah's hand found Luke's shoulder. I've been offered a job. What kind of job? Jake asked. A drive. Down to Mexico. How long? Liam asked. 3 months. The silence was something he could feel pressing on his chest. But, Daddy. Luke's lip was already trembling. Father's Day. Luke? We've been savin' for Father's Day. What? We've been savin' Daddy. I've been savin' my buttons. Maggie been savin' her ribbon. Jake's gonna make you a... Luke? Sarah said sharply. Stop. But Daddy ain't gonna be here for Father's Day, Sarah. I gotta tell him now, or he won't know. Hush, Luke. Luke looked up at his father with the absolute unbearable face of a 5-year-old who had been holding a secret too big for him. Daddy, are you leaving us? John couldn't answer. Daddy, Mama left. Are you leaving us too? He'd thought he knew what a quiet room sounded like. He'd been wrong. He looked at his children. He looked at Sarah, who had stopped breathing. He looked at Jake, whose hands had become fists at his sides. He looked at Liam, who was looking at the floor, because Liam couldn't look at people when his heart was breaking. He looked at Maggie, who had gone the soft, pale color her mother went when she was about to cry. He looked at Luke. He had not in 11 months of widowerhood, in a year of double shifts, in 100 suppers missed, and 100 bedtimes missed, and 100 bedtime prayers missed, he had not in any of it been asked the question. Get dressed, he said. Daddy, get dressed all of you. We're going fishin'. They stared at him. Now, Jake said. Right now. Daddy, it ain't even... Right now, Jake. They moved. Maggie squealed and grabbed Luke's hand and pulled him behind the curtain. Liam followed at a run. Jake stood another second watching his father, his mouth working on something he didn't say. Then he went. Sarah stayed. "You didn't answer his question, Daddy." "I know I didn't." "You gonna answer it?" "After we fish." "Daddy." "After we fish, Sarah." She nodded once sharp and grown. "All right," she said, and then quieter. "Mama always said you'd come home if we needed you bad enough. I reckon we just ain't needed you bad enough yet." She turned to go behind the curtain. He caught her wrist. It was the first time he'd touched her and he didn't know how long. She didn't pull away. She didn't lean in either. She just stood there with his hand around her wrist like a thing being measured. "Sarah, don't say that." "Why not?" "Because it ain't true." "Then prove it ain't true, Daddy." He let her go. She went behind the curtain. He stood alone in the kitchen with 5 small voices on the other side of a curtain whispering about a Father's Day they'd been saving buttons for with $300 on the table he hadn't taken with a wife in the ground, and the only money he could find waiting for him on a Wednesday at the corral in Mexico. He picked up his hat. He held it in his hands like a man holds a thing he's afraid to put down, and outside the cabin he heard a horse come up the road at a slow walk. Not Cassidy's horse, not the rhythm Cassidy's mare made, and he knew before the rider called his name that this was a second knock on a Sunday morning, and a second knock on a Sunday morning meant a thing he hadn't reckoned on, and whatever the rider was bringing him, it was going to make Wednesday's choice for him before he'd had the chance to make it himself. "Marlowe!" the voice called from the yard. It was Holloway's foreman from the Bar M. And his voice was not a good voice. John set the hat back on the table. He walked to the door. The foreman didn't get down off his horse. That was the first thing John saw, and he knew the rest before the man opened his mouth. A foreman who didn't dismount on a Sunday was a foreman who'd come to say a thing he didn't want to say twice. "Mornin', Tom." "Mornin', John." "You want coffee?" "No, sir." "Water?" "No, sir." Tom Pritchard took his hat off. He turned it in his hands. He was a hard man too, like Cassidy. Only Tom had a face that had never learned to hide a thing. "Mr. Holloway sent me." "All right." "He said to tell you not to come Monday." John stood very still on the porch. "Or any day after." "Tom, I'm sorry, John. I am awful sorry. He's letting 3 of you go. Bank called the loan. He's selling off half the herd by August, or he loses the Bar M altogether. He said you was the last man he wanted to let go, and the first man who'd understand why he had to." "That's Holloway, sure enough." "He said come by Friday, and he'll square up your wages." "All right, John." "It's all right, Tom. Ride on home. Tell your wife I said good morning." "John, Ride on, Tom." The foreman put his hat back on. He looked at John a long second. Then he turned his horse and rode out the way he'd come, slow and miserable, like a man delivering a body. John stood on the porch. He didn't go inside right away. He couldn't. Behind him, through the open door, he heard the children whispering again, whispering hard, and he heard Sarah say, hush now, hush both of you." And he understood standing on his own porch on a Sunday morning that the floor of his life had just dropped out from under him, and his children hadn't even noticed because they were planning a Father's Day for a man who was about to have nothing. He went inside. "Daddy, who was that?" Luke called from behind the curtain. "Just a fella from work, son." "Was it bad news?" "No, son. Get dressed." "Daddy, was it?" "Get dressed, Luke." Sarah came out from behind the curtain with her hair half braided. She had her dress on and her boots on, and she'd already washed her face. She looked at him. "Daddy?" "Don't, Sarah." "What did he say?" "Don't ask me right now." "Daddy." "Sarah, please." She didn't ask again. But she didn't stop looking at him either, and that was worse. She finished the braid in her own hair, without a word, and tied it off, and reached for Maggie, who had come out of the curtain in her shift, and she sat Maggie on the bench, and started in on Maggie's hair, like a woman 20 years older than she was. You children find your fishing poles, John said. Mine's broke, Liam said. How's it broke? I broke it. When? Last summer. John couldn't remember last summer. He couldn't remember a single thing about last summer, except Mary's hand getting cold and the doctor riding away and the digging. Use the spare then. It's behind the woodpile. There ain't no spare, Daddy. We used the spare for kindlin' in February. Why'd you use the bee? 'Cause we run out of kindlin', Jake said. He'd come out from behind the curtain too. He was buttoning his shirt with his eyes on his father. You weren't here to chop more. Jake, you asked Daddy, I'm telling you. Jake, that's enough. Yes, sir. The boy turned his back. 12 years old, and he'd already learned to turn his back the way a man turns his back on something he can't afford to look at any longer. John pressed his thumb and forefinger against his eyes. All right, he said. All right, we share poles. Sarah, get the bait. Maggie, get the basket. Liam, you carry Luke if he gets tired. Jake, you and me'll dig the worms. Yes, sir, Jake said. He didn't turn around. They walked out to the creek. He didn't speak the whole way, and the children didn't speak either, except Maggie, who hummed under her breath. She hummed the river song, the one Mary used to sing. Sarah looked at her once sharp, like she was going to tell her to hush, and then thought better of it, and didn't. At the creek, John put Luke on his shoulders without asking. Luke went stiff for half a second like a colt that hadn't been touched in a while, and then his small hands clutched John's hair, and his small body relaxed against the back of John's head, and John felt the boy's heartbeat through his skull and almost stumbled. Daddy. Yes, son. You smell like horses. I reckon I do. I like that smell. He didn't trust his voice. He set Luke down at the bank. He helped Maggie with her hook. He helped Liam find a worm. He showed Jake who knew how, who had always known how, who had been fishing with his father since he was 4. He showed Jake anyway because Jake hadn't said 2 words to him all morning, and he didn't know how else to get the boy to look at him. Jake let him show. Jake didn't look at him, but Jake let him show, and that was something. Sarah sat a little apart from them on the bank with Luke in her lap, because Luke had decided he wanted to sit in Sarah's lap, and she watched. She didn't fish. She watched. She watched her father with her brothers and her sister, and her face did not move, and John could feel her watching him, the way you can feel a hawk watching from high up. Maggie caught the first fish. She shrieked. The fish was the size of John's hand. Daddy! Daddy! I caught one! Daddy! I caught a whale! Daddy! That ain't a whale, Maggie. It's a whale? All right, darling, it's a whale. She held the little fish up by the line, and it twisted, and she squealed, and Luke clapped his hands, and Liam laughed. Liam, who hadn't laughed in front of his father in months. And Jake looked over at his sister with the line in her hand, and the corner of Jake's mouth moved just a quarter of an inch, and John saw it and thought, there he is, there's my boy. Daddy, can we cook it? We'll cook it tonight, Maggie. With cornbread? With cornbread. And honey. We ain't got honey, baby. I got honey, she said. He stopped. What? I got honey, Daddy. I got a whole jar. Where'd you get a jar of honey, Maggie May? She clapped her hand over her mouth. Sarah, she whispered, loud, the way a 6-year-old whispers. Sarah, I told. Hush, Maggie. I told about the honey. Maggie, hush. John looked at Sarah. Sarah was looking at the water. What honey, Sarah? Don't ask Daddy. What honey? Daddy, please, don't ask. He didn't ask. He sat on the bank with his fishing pole in his hand, and he didn't ask. And he understood slowly, the way a man understands a wound an hour after he's taken it, that his children had been planning something for him for weeks, maybe months. They'd been gathering things. Buttons, ribbon, honey. They had been building a Father's Day in secret, while their father came home at midnight and left at dawn and forgot every birthday and every promise, and they had been doing it because they loved him, and they had been doing it because they were afraid of losing him, and they had been doing it because they didn't know what else to do. He set the pole down. He stood up. Daddy, Maggie said, I just need a minute, baby. Daddy, where you going? Just down the bank a piece, y'all keep fishing." He walked. He walked maybe 20 paces. He stopped where he thought they couldn't see him. He put his hand against a cottonwood tree, and he leaned his weight on it, and he made a sound he had been making in private for 11 months. A sound he had never let his children hear, the sound of a man who had buried his wife and was now burying himself. "Daddy." He hadn't heard her come up behind him. "Sarah, go back." "No, sir." "Sarah, you been crying alone for a year, Daddy. Mama told me you would. She said, Sarah, your daddy don't know how to cry where folks can see him, and that's gonna kill him, and you gotta let him cry where folks can see him before it does." Her voice didn't shake. "She told me that the day she died, Daddy. She made me promise." He couldn't turn around. "Daddy, turn around." "Sarah, I can't." "Turn around, Daddy." He turned around. She was standing there with her braids falling out and her bare feet in the dust, and her face just exactly her mother's face. And she walked up to him, and she put her arms around his middle, and she pressed her cheek against his shirt, and she didn't say a word. He held her. He held her so hard he thought he'd break her. She didn't break. "Daddy." "Sarah, don't go to Mexico." "Sarah, don't go to Mexico, Daddy. We'll eat beans. We'll eat dirt. I don't care. Don't go to Mexico." "Sarah, listen to me. Listen, baby. Holloway let me go." She lifted her head. "What?" "This morning, the fellow who came, he let me go. The bar M's done." "Daddy." "There ain't no double shifts no more. There ain't no shifts at all." "Daddy." "And Cassidy's drive is the only money I know how to find." "Daddy, no." "Sarah, I gotta." "Daddy, no." "Sarah, listen to." "Daddy, please, 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 I am begging you, please." "Sarah." "Daddy, I can't be mama again. I can't be mama for 3 more months. Daddy, I can't, Daddy, I can't." She broke. She broke right there against his chest, and it was the worst sound he had ever heard. Worse than Mary's last breath, worse than Luke crying for his mother in the night, worse than the sound the dirt had made on the box. It was the sound of a 12-year-old who had been pretending to be 30 for a year and who could not pretend for 1 more day. He held her. He didn't say anything. He didn't have anything to say. He held her, and he rocked her, and he understood with a clarity he had not had in 11 months that he had been wrong about every single thing. Money wasn't what they needed. Money had never been what they needed. They had needed him. They had needed him, and he had run from them, run from the house that was full of Mary's ghost. Run into the work because the work was the only thing that didn't ask him to feel anything. He had told himself he was working for them. He had been lying. He had been working away from them. "Sarah." "Daddy." "I ain't going to Mexico." She pulled back. "What? I ain't going." "Daddy, I'm gonna find another way. I don't know what way, but I ain't going." "Daddy, what about?" "I don't know, baby. I don't know yet, but I ain't leaving y'all. Not for 3 months. Not for 3 days. Not for 3 hours. I ain't leaving y'all again." She started crying again, but it was a different crying. He held her. From down the bank he heard Maggie yell something about another whale, and he heard Liam laugh, and he heard Luke ask where Sarah went, and he heard Jake, who had not spoken to him without anger in 6 months. Jake said, "She's with Daddy Luke. She'll be back. Leave 'em be." "She'll be back. Leave 'em be." Jake had said leave 'em be. John pressed his face into the top of Sarah's head and he breathed. When they walked back up the bank, the children were quiet. Even Maggie was quiet. They had caught 4 fish between them, and Liam was holding the bucket and Jake was holding the poles, and Luke was sitting on a rock with his small hands folded in his lap, like a man at a funeral, and they all looked up when their father and their oldest sister came back. "Y'all done?" Sarah asked. Her voice was steady. It was a miracle of a voice. "We done," Jake said. "All right, let's go home." They walked home. Nobody spoke. At the cabin, Sarah set the fish in the basin to clean. Maggie went to fetch the cornmeal. Liam went to chop kindling. He was 9 years old, and chopped kindling now because there had been no one else to do it for the better part of a year. Luke sat on the floor and played with a piece of string. And Jake went and stood in front of his father. Daddy. Jake? I gotta tell you something. Yes, son. The boy looked at his boots. I been working. You been what? Working for Mr. Pell at the livery. Jake. 2 mornings a week before school. He pays me a dime. Jake, you're 12 years old. I know how old I am, Daddy. You don't need to be, I've been saving it, Daddy. He looked up. I've been saving it for Father's Day. I was gonna buy you a new hat band. The one you got's all wore through. I seen one in town for 40 cents. I had 38 cents saved up and I was gonna get the rest by Friday. Jake. But I reckon you're gonna need that money more than you need a hat band. He pulled a small cloth bag out of his pocket. He held it out. Take it, Daddy. Jake. Son, no. Take it. Jake, I ain't taking your Father's Day money. Daddy, take it. The boy's hand was trembling. The boy's whole body was trembling. The boy was 12 years old, and he was holding out a cloth bag with 38 cents in it to keep his father from going to Mexico, and his father could not breathe. John went down on one knee. Jake. Yes, sir. You put that money back in your pocket. Daddy. Put it back, son. But Daddy, I ain't going to Mexico, Jake. The boy stared at him. What? I ain't going. I told Sarah, I'm telling you, I ain't going. You but the bar M. Daddy Tom told me when he rode up, he said you was the last man Holloway. You heard him. I was at the woodpile, Daddy. I heard everything. John closed his eyes. I'll find work, Jake. Daddy, where there ain't no work. Pa Watkins lost his place last spring. The Carltons left for Oregon. Folks are pulling out, Daddy, there ain't nothing here. That's why Cassidy's offering so much, ain't it? $300, 'cause ain't nobody else fool enough to take it. That's the truth, ain't it, Daddy? Jake. Tell me the truth, Daddy. I'm 12, you can tell me. That's the truth, Jake. Then go. What? Go to Mexico, Daddy. We'll be all right. I'll work for Mr. Pell every day. Sarah'll keep the house. We'll be all right for 3 months. I promise. Jake, I promise, Daddy. Son, listen to me. Listen. I told your sister, and I'm telling you. I ain't leaving y'all. I ain't never leaving y'all again. Do you hear me? Son, look at me, Jake. Do you hear me? The boy's eyes filled. Yes, sir. I love you, Jake. The boy made a sound. It wasn't a word. It was the sound a boy makes when his father has not said those words to him in a year, and he has been carrying that silence around like a sack of stones. John pulled him in. The boy folded against him. Daddy, I've been so... I know, son. I've been trying so hard to be the... I know, son. I know. You don't gotta be the man no more, Jake. I'm the man, Jake. You just be 12. The boy cried against his father's shirt. The other children had stopped what they were doing. They were standing in a small, ragged half-circle around them, Sarah with her hands wet from cleaning fish, Maggie with cornmeal on her apron, Liam holding the axe, Luke with his piece of string. They didn't speak. They watched. And then Maggie, who was 6 and didn't know any better, walked up and put her small hand on her father's shoulder. Daddy. Yes, baby. Don't be sad. I ain't sad, baby. I got something to tell you. Maggie, hush, Sarah said. But Sarah. Hush, Maggie. But Sarah, he ain't going to Mexico now, can I tell him? A long silence. Sarah looked at Jake. Jake looked at Sarah. Liam looked at the floor. Tell him what Maggie, John said. Maggie looked up at her father with her enormous eyes and her small hand on his shoulder and her cornmeal apron and the little jar of honey she had hidden somewhere he didn't know, and she said, We made you a present. You made me a... We've been making it, since Mama died. He went still. Maggie. Sarah said we couldn't tell. Sarah said we had to wait till Father's Day. But you been so sad, Daddy, and you been working so much, and Luke said maybe you didn't love us no more. And Jake said hush. Luke, he loves us, and Liam said maybe Daddy don't know we love him. Sarah, maybe he forgot. Maggie? Sarah's voice cracked. And Sarah said no, he knows, But I don't think he knows Sarah. I've been watching him, and I don't think he knows. Maggie. So we made him a present daddy, all 5 of us. Even Luke, and Luke can't even write yet, but he drew you a picture and Jake helped him. She stopped. She put both her hands over her mouth. Sarah, she whispered through her hands. I told. Sarah didn't answer. Sarah was looking at her father with her wet hands hanging at her sides, and her face wet too, and she was looking at him the way her mother had looked at him on their wedding day, which was a look John had not seen on any face on this earth for 11 months. Maggie, Sarah said quietly, go get it. Now. Now, baby. But Father's Day ain't till... Father's Day is today, Maggie. Go get it. Maggie ran. She ran behind the curtain, and Liam ran after her, and Luke pushed himself up off the floor and toddled after his brother, and Jake looked at his father one last time and stood up and went after them, and Sarah didn't move. Sarah. It's in the trunk, Daddy, under Mama's quilt. We've been hiding it there. He couldn't speak. Daddy, she said, I gotta tell you something before they bring it out. Yes, baby. It ain't finished. What? The present. It ain't finished. We was gonna finish it tonight. Maggie was wrong to say it was done. It ain't done. Sarah, it don't matter. Daddy, it matters. Her voice was shaking again. Because what we got to give you, it ain't enough. It ain't gonna be enough. 5 children with buttons and ribbon and a jar of honey ain't gonna pay no bank loan, and ain't gonna keep no house, and ain't gonna feed no 5 mouths. And I need you to know that before they bring it out. Because they don't know yet that love ain't enough, and I do. Sarah. Mama died and love wasn't enough. He reached for her. She didn't come. Daddy, tell me you ain't going to Mexico and you mean it. Look me in my face and tell me. Sarah. Look me in my face, Daddy. He looked her in the face, and from behind the curtain 4 small voices were giggling, and 4 small pairs of feet were running, and they were carrying something in their hands. Something they had been making since the day their mother died. Something they had been hiding under their mother's quilt in the trunk for 11 months. And the curtain moved, and Maggie's voice called out, Close your eyes, Daddy, close 'em. And Sarah was still waiting for her father to look her in the face and tell her the truth. I ain't going, Sarah. Swear it. I swear it on your mother's grave. She nodded once. She closed her eyes. The children came out from behind the curtain. Maggie went first. She came around the curtain holding it out in front of her like a thing too heavy for her arms, and it was a wooden box, oak, sanded smooth, the kind of box a man might keep his important papers in. John knew the box. It had been Mary's. It had held her wedding ring, and her mother's letters, and the little tin daguerreotype of her own father. Daddy, open your eyes. He opened them. Maggie, where'd you... Mama gave it to Sarah. What? Before she died. Mama gave the box to Sarah. He looked at Sarah. Sarah was standing very still by the basin, her wet hands at her sides. Sarah. Open it, Daddy. Sarah, where did... Daddy, open it. Maggie set the box on the table. The children gathered around. Luke pushed himself up onto the bench so he could see. Liam came up on John's left. Jake came up on his right. Sarah didn't move from the basin. John put his hand on the lid. Daddy? Maggie's voice was a whisper now. Daddy, wait. Yes, baby. You can't be mad. What? Sarah said you was gonna be mad. About Mama giving her the box and not telling you. Sarah said you'd be mad. Maggie, I ain't gonna be. Sarah said Mama made her promise not to tell. Sarah said Mama said you wasn't ready. Sarah said Mama said one day you'd be ready and Sarah'd know the day. Sarah said today's the day, Daddy. Are you mad? He couldn't look at Sarah. He couldn't do it. I ain't mad, Maggie. Sarah said, I ain't mad, baby. I swear it. He opened the box. The first thing on top was a folded piece of paper. He recognized the handwriting before his eyes had finished focusing. It was Mary's. The careful, slanted hand of a schoolteacher's daughter who had taught herself to write in a barn by lamplight. Daddy, Sarah said from across the room. "Don't read it yet." Sarah. "Don't read it yet, please. Look at the rest first." He set the letter aside. The next thing was a stack of cards. 5 of them. 1 from each child. The ones from the older children had words on them, careful and crooked. The one from Luke was drawing a stick figure with a hat that was too big for him, and 4 smaller stick figures around him, and 1 stick figure floating above them all with a halo, and the words, "Mama said hi," written in Sarah's hand at the bottom of the page. "Luke drew that one, Daddy." "I see it, Maggie." "Mama said hi. That's what Sarah told Luke to put. Sarah said Mama'd want to say hi to you on Father's Day." His hand was shaking. "Keep going, Daddy." He kept going. Under the cards, there was a small book, hand-stitched, Sarah's stitching. He knew her stitching the way he knew her face. Each page was a coupon. Good for 1 fishing trip, any day. Sarah will pack lunch. Jake. Good for me learning how to ride a horse proper. No crying. Liam. Good for 1 bedtime story. I'll tell you Mama's favorite. Sarah taught me. Maggie. Good for a hug. Anytime you need it. Even at night. Luke. And under it in Sarah's handwriting, Luke dictated this. He insisted on the part about night. The last coupon. Sarah's. Just 1 line. Good for 1 daughter. Whenever you're ready to have one again. He set the book down on the table. He could not see. Daddy. I'm all right, Liam. Daddy, you're crying. I'm all right, son. Daddy, you ain't all right. Liam. Hush. Sarah's voice. Quiet. Even. She had moved up beside him without his noticing. There's more, Daddy. He looked into the box. A small mason jar. The kind Mary had used for honey. Inside a handful of coins. He didn't have to count them. He could see what they came to. Maybe 70 cents, maybe $1. Pennies and a half dime and 1 quarter that had been polished bright. There was a piece of paper folded around the lid that read in Jake's handwriting, "For Daddy. We earned it." "Jake," he said. "I told you about my dime, Daddy." "There's more than a dime in this jar, son." Sarah did chores for Mrs. Pell. Liam ran errands for the smith. Maggie sold eggs to the schoolmaster's wife. Jake paused. Luke said he'd give you his marble collection, but Sarah said marbles wasn't the same as money. "It is to me, Luke." Luke beamed. "I got 6 marbles, Daddy." "6 is a lot, son." "I got a Steely. That's the best one. You can have my Steely, Daddy, for Father's Day." "Luke, I want you to have it." The boy climbed down off the bench and ran behind the curtain and came back with a small drawstring pouch and put it in his father's hand and ran back behind the curtain and didn't come out. "He's shy," Maggie whispered. "He don't like nobody seeing him give things." "All right, baby." "Daddy, the letter." He looked at Sarah. She nodded. He picked up the folded paper. He couldn't open it. His hands wouldn't. "Daddy?" "Sarah, I can't." "You can. Mama said you could." Sarah. "Read it, Daddy. She wrote it for you." He unfolded the paper. His own breath went strange. John. "If Sarah's giving you this, then it's a Father's Day after I'm gone, and she's decided you're ready. Sarah will know. She always knows. Don't argue with her. She's got her grandmother's mouth, and you'll lose. You're going to want to run, John. I know you. You'll work yourself to death because the work doesn't ask you to feel anything, and feeling things is going to be the hardest thing you ever do. But the children need you to feel things. They need their father, John, and their father is not the wages he brings home. Their father is the man who carries Luke on his shoulders, and the man who teaches Liam to spit proper, and the man who tells Maggie she's the prettiest girl in the territory, even when her hair's full of straw. And Sarah. Oh, John, Sarah, don't let her be me. Don't. She'll try. She's been trying since the day I told her I was sick. You take that weight off her, John. You put it back where it belongs. On you. Because you can carry it. I married you because I knew you could carry it. And Jake. Jake's going to be angry. Let him be angry. Don't break him. He's not breaking yet. He's just hurting. I love you, John Marlowe. I loved you the first time I saw you, and I'll love you when you cross over and find me again. But until then, you live for those 5. You hear me? You live for them, not work for them. Live for them. Your wife always. Mary. The cabin was silent. He folded the letter. He folded it in half, then in quarters. Then he pressed it against his chest with the flat of his hand, and he held it there because he didn't know what else to do with it. Daddy. Sarah. She wrote it the night before she died. Sarah. She made me promise to wait. She said one day you'd be standing in this cabin and you'd be just about to do something that would tear our family apart, and that'd be the day. She said I'd know it. And I didn't believe her, Daddy. I thought I'd never know it. But this morning, when Cassidy was sitting there, I knew it. Sarah. I went back behind the curtain and I cried, not 'cause of Mexico, 'cause Mama was right. Mama was right about everything. Sarah Marlowe. Yes, Daddy. He pulled her in. He pulled her in against his chest, and the letter was crushed between them, and he didn't care, and she didn't care. And from behind him, he heard Jake start to cry, the way a 12-year-old boy cries when he's been holding it for a year. And then Liam, and then Maggie, and then from behind the curtain, Luke calling out, "Why's everybody crying? Is somebody hurt? Did Sarah get hurt? Come out here, Luke. Daddy, what's wrong? Come out here, son. All of you. Come here." They came. He went down on his knees in the middle of the floor, and he gathered all 5 of them, 5 small bodies, 4 of them sobbing and 1 of them confused, and he held them. He held all of them at once, the way he should have been holding them for 11 months, the way he hadn't held them since the day Mary went into the ground. I love y'all. We love you, Daddy. I am so sorry. Daddy. I am so sorry. I was so busy being a widower, I forgot to be a father. Daddy, don't. I forgot Sarah, I forgot, and y'all kept loving me anyway. Y'all kept saving buttons and pennies, and y'all kept that box hid for 11 months waiting for me to come back to y'all, and You're back now, Daddy. That was Liam. Liam, who hadn't said a sentence to him in 3 months. You're back now, ain't you, Daddy? Yes, son, I'm back. Then it don't matter what came before. He looked at his 9-year-old son. Liam. Mama said in church, Daddy. Mama said the prodigal come home and the daddy run out to meet him. Mama said the daddy didn't ask where he been. Mama said the daddy just killed the fatted calf. We ain't got a fatted calf, Daddy, but we got fish. He laughed. He didn't mean to. It cracked out of his chest. We got fish. 4 fish, Daddy. 4 fish for a fatted calf. Mama'd say that's enough. Yeah, son, Mama'd say that's enough. They sat on the floor a long time. When they got up, Sarah went and started the fire, and Maggie went and got the cornmeal, and Liam went and chopped kindling, and Luke sat on his father's foot, the way he had when he was 3, and Mary was alive, and Jake stood at the window. Jake had always stood at windows when he was thinking, and Jake said, Daddy. Yes, son. There's a rider coming. The room went still. Who? I don't know him. John stood up. Luke clung to his pant leg. He walked Luke gently aside and crossed to the window. There was a man on a roan horse coming up the road. He wore a black coat in the summer heat, which told John who he was before the man's face did. Sarah. Yes, Daddy. Take the children behind the curtain. Daddy, who is it? Sarah. Now. She took them. He waited at the door. The rider stopped at the porch. He didn't dismount. He looked down at John from the saddle. Marlowe. Sir? Name's Crane. Augustus Crane. I represent the Cattlemen's Bank of Fort Smith. Sir? You're behind on a note, Mr. Marlowe. I know I am. 3 months. I know it. My instructions are to deliver this notice. He held out a folded paper. 30 days, Mr. Marlowe. You pay the back interest in full, or the bank takes the deed. House and land. 30 days from today's date. John took the paper. 30 days, he said. 30 days. Mr. Crane. Yes, Mr. Marlowe. How much is the back interest? $142. And the principal? $710. Sir, my wife. I know about your wife, Mr. Marlowe. Sir, I've been working the bar M. I know about the bar M, Mr. Marlowe. The bank holds the bar M's note as well. Mr. Holloway will be receiving a similar visit on Tuesday. Sir, Mr. Marlowe, I'll say a thing to you that I'm not paid to say. There's a man who'll be along to see you within the week. Name of Eldridge Stark. He buys notes. He buys land. He'll offer you $100 cash to walk away clean. I'd advise you not to take it. The land's worth more. But I'd also advise you that 30 days is 30 days, and Stark knows it as well as I do, and if you can't find $142 by the 23rd of next month, his $100 will be the only money you see. Do you understand me, Mr. Marlowe? John was holding the paper so tight it was bending. I understand you, sir. Good day, Mr. Marlowe. Sir. The man rode away. John stood on the porch. He didn't go inside. He couldn't. Behind him, the curtain moved. Daddy? Sarah, go back. Daddy, I heard. Sarah. $142. Sarah, please. 30 days. Sarah, get back behind the curtain, baby. I gotta think. Daddy, Cassidy's 300 would pay the back interest twice over. He turned around. She was standing in the doorway. She had Luke on her hip. She had Maggie's hand. Liam was behind her. Jake was behind Liam. All of them. All 5 of them were standing in the doorway looking at him. Sarah, I swore on your mother's grave. I know what you swore, Daddy. I swore. Daddy? I ain't going, Sarah. I ain't never going. We'll find another way. What way, Daddy? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Daddy, there ain't another way. Not in 30 days. Not in this country. Not now. Sarah, Daddy, listen to me. Her voice broke and held and broke again. Mama's letter. She didn't know about this. She didn't know we'd lose the cabin. She thought we'd be all right on the land. She wrote that letter thinking you just had to come home from the bar M every night. She didn't know. Sarah, Mama was wrong, Daddy. Don't say that, baby. She was Daddy. About this part, she was wrong. Sometimes love ain't enough to keep a roof over your head, and Mama didn't know it 'cause Mama died before the bank came. But I'm 12, and I've been running this house, and I know it. I know it, Daddy. He was looking at her and not seeing her. Daddy, you go to Mexico. You get the $300. You come home. We keep the cabin. We keep each other. Sarah, you said this morning. I know what I said this morning. You said you couldn't be Mama for 3 more months. I can't. Then I'll do it anyway. Sarah, no. I'll do it anyway, Daddy, 'cause it's 3 months or it's the rest of our lives split up to 4 different farms in 4 different counties. That's what Cassidy said this morning. I heard him. He said the county splits up orphans. He said we'd never see each other again. Sarah, he was telling the truth, Daddy. A silence. Jake stepped forward. Daddy, Jake's son. I'm 12 too. I'll work for Mr. Pell 6 days a week. I won't go to school. Jake, you ain't quitting school. Daddy, listen, Sarah's right. You go. We work. We make it. 3 months, Daddy. Boys, you don't understand. Daddy? Liam this time. Liam at 9 years old, his fists clenched at his sides. Daddy, we made you come home today. We made you come home to fish. And you came. You came, Daddy. So you'll come back from Mexico too, won't you? You'll come back. Liam. Won't you, Daddy? He couldn't speak. Maggie. His voice cracked. Maggie, baby, what do you say? Maggie looked up at him, 6 years old, cornmeal on her apron. I say I want you home, Daddy. Maggie. But Sarah says Mexico, and Sarah's smart, so I say Mexico. Her lip trembled. But Daddy, I'm gonna miss you, so bad. He was on his knees again. He didn't remember going down. Luke. The smallest one looked at him with enormous wet eyes from Sarah's hip. Luke, what does my Luke say? Luke considered. Daddy, I say no Mexico. Luke. I say no Mexico, Daddy. I say no. Luke, baby. Mama left. Luke's voice was a small thread. Mama left, and then Daddy left for the Bar M, and now Daddy's gonna leave for Mexico. And Sarah says it's only 3 months, but Daddy. Mama only went for 4 days, and she didn't come back. The room stopped. Luke, I say no, Daddy. I say no, Mexico. John pressed his face into his hands. He couldn't hold them all. Sarah saying go, Jake saying go, Maggie saying she'd miss him, Luke saying no. Mama only went for 4 days and she didn't come back. The banksman riding away with 30 days in his saddle. Cassidy's $300 sitting on the corral fence Wednesday morning. Mary's letter against his chest. The coupon book on the table. 6 marbles in his pocket from Luke. 38 cents from Jake. A jar of honey hidden somewhere he didn't know. He took his hands away from his face. Children. They waited. Children. Listen to me. They waited. I gotta think. Daddy, Sarah began. I gotta think, Sarah. I gotta think on it tonight. I'll tell y'all in the morning. I swear to your mother I'll tell y'all in the morning. But right now I gotta think, and I gotta think alone. Yes, Daddy, Sarah said. Y'all eat the fish. Sarah, you fry 'em. Maggie, you set the table. Jake, you read to the little ones after. From the book your mama liked. Yes, Daddy. I'm going for a walk. I'll be back before dark. Yes, Daddy. He turned to go. He stopped at the door. Sarah. Yes, Daddy. You've been a good daughter. Daddy, don't. You've been the best daughter a man ever had, Sarah Marlowe. And I want you to know I see it. I see what you done. I see you. She put her hand over her mouth. Daddy. I see you, baby. He walked out into the yard. He walked past the woodpile, and past the cottonwood, and past the fence. Mary had wanted whitewashed, and the gate he had not painted. And he kept walking, and behind him he heard nothing, because the children inside were too stunned to make a sound. And ahead of him, the road bent toward town, and at the bend in the road he stopped because there at the bend was a man on a horse. A man he had never seen before. A man in a fine dark suit on a tall black gelding with a face the color of cold milk and eyes that had calculated the value of every blade of grass between the road and John's cabin. The man tipped his hat. Mr. Marlowe. Sir. My name is Eldridge Stark. Sir. I represent the Stark Land and Cattle Company, Mr. Marlowe. I'd hoped to make your acquaintance under happier circumstances. There ain't happier circumstances, Mr. Stark. Perhaps not. State your business. The man smiled. It wasn't a smile. It was a thing his face had learned to do. Mr. Marlowe, I'm in the business of helping families in difficult positions. The Cattlemen's Bank of Fort Smith holds your note. They will foreclose in 30 days. Mr. Crane just told me that. Mr. Crane works for them. I work for myself. What do you want, sir? $100 cash. Today. You sign over the deed. You walk away with the clothes on your back and the children at your side. And you don't owe a man $1 in this world. Better than nothing, Mr. Marlowe. And nothing is what you'll have on the 23rd of next month. Mr. Stark. Yes, Mr. Marlowe. My land's worth $800. In a good year. Even in a bad year it's worth $400. To a buyer with cash on hand. Are there such buyers in this country? Mr. Marlowe. John didn't answer. There are not. Because the bank has called every note within 30 miles of here. Mr. Holloway, Mr. Watkins. The Carltons before they ran for Oregon. 3/4 of every working ranch in this county will be on the auction block by August. Now, why do you imagine the bank is doing such a thing all at once? You tell me, sir. Because, Mr. Marlowe, I asked them to. John felt the road tilt under his feet. You what? I bought a controlling interest in the Cattlemen's Bank of Fort Smith in March. The notes are mine, Mr. Marlowe. The foreclosure is mine. The 30 days is mine. And the $100 I'm offering you today is mine. And tomorrow it will be $90. And on Wednesday it will be $80, and so on, until the day Mr. Crane arrives with the sheriff and you walk off that land with nothing but 5 children and a wagon you don't own." John couldn't speak. "I am being honest with you, Mr. Marlowe, because I respect you. I have inquired. You are a hard worker. You buried your wife last year. You have 5 children. The oldest is 12. I am not your enemy. I am your circumstance. Mister. Yes. Get off my road." Stark inclined his head. "Of course, Mr. Marlowe. I'll be back Tuesday. $90 Tuesday. I do hope you'll be reasonable." He turned the black horse and rode at a slow walk back toward town. John stood at the bend in the road with his hand against a fence post, and he thought for one whole breath that he was going to fall down. He didn't. He turned around. He walked back toward the cabin. By the time he got to the porch, the sun was sinking behind the ridge, and the smell of frying fish was coming out the open door, and his 5 children were sitting at the table waiting for him without eating. Because no Marlowe child had ever eaten supper without their father. At the head of the table, Mary's Rule kept 11 months past her grave. He stood at the door. "Daddy, come eat." "Sarah." "Daddy, we saved you the biggest piece. Come eat." He came in. He sat down. Maggie said grace. Maggie always said grace because Mary had taught her to. Her small voice trembled through the words she'd said since she was 3. "Father, we thank thee for this food, and for our home, and for our daddy. Amen." "Amen," they all said. He couldn't lift the fork. "Daddy." "Yes, Jake." "You ain't eaten." "I will, son." "Daddy." "I will." He picked up the fork. He put a piece of fish in his mouth. He chewed it without tasting it. He swallowed. "Daddy, was that the bank man come back?" "No, Sarah, that was a different man." "Who?" "Sarah, eat your supper." "Daddy." "His name was Stark. He's the man Mr. Crane warned me about. He's the man who'll buy us out." Sarah set her fork down. "How much?" $100 today, less tomorrow." "Daddy." "And Sarah, listen. Listen to me. He told me something. He said he owns the bank. He said the foreclosures all over the county Holloway Watkins. Carlton, that's him. He bought the bank in March. He's taken the whole county." "Daddy?" "He's taken the whole county, Sarah." The children were silent. Even Luke, who had been pushing peas around his plate, had stopped. "Daddy?" Jake said. "Then Cassidy's drive ain't enough." "What?" "Cassidy's drive, $300. It pays the back interest. Don't pay the principal. If Stark owns the bank, he'll just call the principal next." "Jake?" "I've been thinking on it, Daddy. While you was outside, he'll just call the principal." John looked at his 12-year-old son. "Yeah, son, he will." "Then Mexico don't help." "No, son, it don't." "Then Daddy." "I know, Jake." "Daddy, what do we do?" He couldn't answer. The cabin was quiet a long time. The fire in the stove popped. Somewhere outside, a coyote called, and another answered. Then Sarah stood up. "Daddy." Sarah. "I want to read Mama's letter again." Sarah. "The part you didn't read out. Read it out, Daddy. The whole thing." He stared at her. "All of it. The children gotta hear it too. They've been waiting 11 months for Mama to talk to 'em, Daddy. Read it out." He took the letter out of his shirt. He unfolded it. He read it. His voice broke twice, and he kept reading. When he got to the part about Sarah, Sarah's hands went to her face and stayed there. When he got to the part about Jake, Jake closed his eyes and didn't open them. When he got to the last line, not work for them, live for them, Maggie said very softly, "That sounds like Mama." "It does, baby." "Daddy." "Yes, Maggie." "Mama said live for us." "Yes, baby." "Not work." "No, baby, not just work." "Then we ain't sellin' Daddy." He looked at her. "Maggie, we ain't sellin' to that mean man." "Maggie, baby. Mama said live here, with us. She said it. So we ain't sellin'." "Maggie, sometimes a man can't." "Maggie's right." That was Liam. Liam. Maggie's right, Daddy. Mama said live for us. Mama didn't say sell the cabin. Mama didn't say go to Mexico. Mama said live for us. We can live for each other in this cabin. We can live for each other anywhere, Daddy. I'm saying, if we got to leave, we leave together. Not Daddy to Mexico, not us to 4 farms. Together, Daddy. That's what Mama meant. Liam Marlowe. Yes, Daddy. You been thinking a lot today, son. Yes, sir. Come here. The boy came around the table. John pulled him in against his chest and held him there and kissed the top of his head, and Liam, who had not let his father kiss the top of his head in a year, Liam stayed. Daddy? Yes, Sarah. There might be a way. What way? I don't know yet, but I'm thinking. Sarah, you don't gotta be the one thinking. Daddy, listen. Mr. Crane said the bank holds Mr. Holloway's note. Mr. Holloway's losing the Bar M Tuesday. Mr. Watkins is gone. Carlton's gone. But Daddy, what about everybody else? What? Everybody else. Daddy, the Pells, Mr. Cassidy, the Jensens, the Whitfields up the creek, the school teacher, the widow Hobbs. There's 20 families in this county that ain't lost a thing yet. And Stark told you he's taken the whole county. Sarah, they don't know Daddy. What? They don't know. None of them know. Mr. Holloway just got told today. We just got told today. Stark's doing it slow on purpose, ain't he, Daddy? He's picking us off one by one so nobody puts it together till it's too late. John stared at her. She was 12. She was 12 years old. Sarah Marlowe. Daddy. How'd you figure that out? It's what Mama would have figured out. Sarah. Mama always said when something's wrong, look for who profits. That's what she said, Daddy, about the war, about the railroad fight in '74, about everything. Who profits? And Stark profits if we all sell separate. He don't profit if we know what's happening to all of us at once. He couldn't breathe. Daddy, Jake said. Daddy, listen to her. I'm listening, son. Daddy, we gotta tell him. Tell him what, Jake? Tell him all. Tonight. Right now. Get on the horse and ride to the Bar M and tell Holloway. Then ride to Cassidy's. Then ride to the Pells. Tell every family in this county before Tuesday. Tell them Stark owns the bank. Tell them they're next. Jake. Daddy, we gotta go now. John looked at his 5 children. He set the letter down on the table. Sarah. Yes, Daddy. Get my coat. She ran. Jake, saddle the bay. Yes, sir. He was out the door before the words had finished. Liam, you stay with the little ones. You're the man of the house till I'm back. Yes, sir, Daddy. Maggie. Yes, Daddy. You feed the chickens before bed. Yes, Daddy. Luke. The boy looked up. I love you, son. I love you too, Daddy. I'll be back before morning. You promise? I swear it on your mother's grave, Lucas Marlowe. All right, Daddy. Sarah was back with the coat. She held it out. John put it on. He took his hat off the bench. Sarah, where's that letter? Right here, Daddy. Put it back in the box. Yes, Daddy. And Sarah, yes, Daddy. You was right today. About all of it. You hear me? Yes, Daddy. Moma'd be proud of you tonight. She put her hands over her face. Don't, Daddy. She would be Sarah. Don't make me cry now, Daddy. We ain't got time for me to cry. He kissed the top of her head. He went out. Jake had the bay saddled. The boy was holding the bridle in both hands, like a man holds a thing he's afraid to drop. Daddy. Yes, son. Take me with you. Jake. Take me. Daddy. I can ride. I can go to the houses you can't get to in time. I can split off at the fork and ride to the Pells while you ride to the Bar M. That's a half a night saved, Daddy. That's a half a night. John looked at his 12-year-old son. He thought of Mary. He's not breaking yet. He's just hurting. Saddle the gray. Yes, sir. The boy ran. John mounted up. The bay danced under him. She had not been ridden hard in months, and she could feel something coming. He held her in. Jake came back leading the gray. The boy swung up like he'd been swinging up all his life, which he had from the time he could walk, and looked at his father. "Daddy, you take the Pells, the Whitfields, and the widow Hobbs. Then you come straight home. You don't go further than the Hobbs place, Jake. You hear me?" "Yes, sir." "And Jake?" "Yes, sir." "You ride careful. There ain't $142 in this world worth losing you. Do you hear me, son? Do you hear me?" "Yes, Daddy." "Then ride." He rode. Jake split off at the fork and was gone into the dusk at a hard canter. John pushed the bay south toward the Bar M, and the country opened up under him, and he thought of nothing for a while, except the rhythm of the horse and the heat coming off her shoulders, and the way the sky went the color of an old bruise as the sun finished going down. He came up to the Bar M just after full dark. Holloway was on the porch. The old man stood up when he saw who it was. "Marlowe." "Mr. Holloway." "John, what in God's name are you doing on my porch at Stark?" The old man went still. "What about him?" "He owns the bank. He bought it in March. He's taken the whole county. Watkins, Carlton, you me the Pells if they don't pay the Whitfields. He's taken everybody, Mr. Holloway. He told me himself this evening." Holloway sat down. He sat down on the porch step like a man whose knees had gone. "He told you." "Direct, sir." "Why'd he tell you?" "He thought I'd sell. He thought I was beat. He didn't reckon on me riding to you tonight." "John." "Sir." "You sure?" "He named names, Mr. Holloway. He said you'd be visited Tuesday. He knew about my wife. He knew about my children. He's been working on us for a year, sir, maybe longer." Holloway took his hat off. He held it in his hands. He was 64 years old, and he had built the Bar M with his own 2 hands starting at the age of 19. And John watched him understand that everything he'd built was fixing to be taken from him by a man in a dark suit, and watched him understand it in less than a minute, because that was the kind of man Holloway was. "All right, John." "Sir." "Get down off that horse." "Mr. Holloway, I gotta keep riding." "Get down, John." He got down. Holloway stood up. "Tom," he called into the house. The foreman came out. "Tom, saddle every horse on this place. Wake every man. We're riding tonight." "Mr. Holloway." "We're riding to every door in this county, Tom. Every man on the Bar M's payroll, every neighbor, every cousin. We're telling folks what's being done to 'em, before the snake gets to bite 'em separate." "Yes, sir." The foreman ran. Holloway turned to John. "Marlowe?" "Sir?" "You done a thing tonight. I want you to know I see it." "Sir, You rode in here when you could have sold and walked. You could have taken his $100 and saved your own family. You rode here instead. To the man who fired you this morning." "Mr. Holloway." "Hush, John. I'm saying a thing. Hush and let an old man say it." "Yes, sir." "Your wife?" The old man stopped. "Your wife was the finest woman in this county, John. I knew her people back in Tennessee. She wouldn't let you sell, you know that. That's why you rode." "Yes, sir. And now you got 5 children at home in 30 days, and you rode out here in the dark to save my place when your own's burning. So you listen. You listen good. Whatever happens with the bank, John Marlowe, whatever happens, your children don't go to the county. You hear me? They don't go. I got room. I got beds. I got a kitchen big enough for 10. If it comes to it, you bring those babies to the Bar M. You hear me?" John couldn't see. "Sir?" "Say it back, John." "I hear you, sir." "Good. Now get back on that horse. Ride to Cassidy's. He's at the South Camp tonight. Tell him what you told me. He's an ornery son of a gun, and he was trying to rope you into Mexico this morning, wasn't he?" "How'd you know?" "Because I know Cassidy. He thought he was helping. He didn't know about Stark. Tell him. He'll ride. He owes a debt to half the families in this county. You tell him I said to ride." "Yes, sir." "Go, John." He went. He rode to Cassidy's South Camp. He told him. Cassidy went white under his sunburn. Cassidy said one word that wasn't fit for a Sunday, and then Cassidy mounted up and Cassidy rode. John rode to the Pells. They had already heard it from Jake. The boy had come and gone. Mr. Pell was already saddling. He rode to the Jensens. He rode to the Whitfields. He rode until the bay was lathered and the moon was high and his own legs had gone numb in the stirrups, and the news was running ahead of him by then, running mouth to mouth across the county, the way fire runs across dry grass. He came home an hour before dawn. The cabin was lit, every lamp burning. He thought for one bad second that something was wrong, that someone had come, that the children. But then he saw the wagons in the yard. 3 wagons, 4, 6. He did not understand at first. He got down off the bay. His legs would not hold him. He held onto the saddle. The door opened. Sarah came out. "Daddy." "Sarah what?" "Daddy, come inside." "Sarah, whose wagons?" "Come inside, Daddy." He went inside. His cabin was full of people. The Pells, the Whitfields, the widow Hobbs, the schoolteacher and his wife, 2 of Holloway's hands, Cassidy with dust still on his hat, an old woman he half recognized from the church on the river, a young man he'd never seen in his life. 12, 15, 20 people standing shoulder to shoulder in his small front room with his 5 children on the bench against the wall and his oldest daughter holding a small tin box in her hands. "Daddy, sit down." "Sarah." "Sit down, Daddy." He sat down. The widow Hobbs stepped forward. She was 70 years old, and she had buried 2 husbands and 3 sons, and she walked with a cane she did not lean on, and she stood in front of John Marlowe, and she said, "John." "Mrs. Hobbs, your boy come to my door tonight." "Yes, ma'am." "He told me what's being done to this county." "Yes, ma'am." "He told me you needed $142 in 30 days, or you'd lose this cabin." "Yes, ma'am." She looked around the room. She nodded once. "Sarah Marlowe, open the box." Sarah opened it. It was full of money. John couldn't see what kind. He couldn't see it all. His eyes were full. "That's $193.40, John Marlowe," the widow Hobbs said. "Counted twice. We've been gathering it since your boy come to my door 3 hours ago. Every house he stopped at, we passed the word. Every house passed the word to 2 more. Cassidy here rode west and brought back the Holloway hands' wages Holloway sent it, and Mr. Pell brought what was in his strong box, and the school teacher brought what they had set by for the new piano they was savin' for, and I brought what was left of my Henry's pension." "Mrs. Hobbs." "Hush, John." "Mrs. Hobbs, I can't." "You can, and you will. Because this ain't charity, John Marlowe. This is the county. The county has decided. You take the money, you pay the bank, you keep the cabin. And tomorrow at first light, every man in this room is riding to Fort Smith to find a lawyer, and we are taking that snake to court for what he done to Watkins and Carlton, and what he tried to do to Holloway and you. Do you understand me, John?" He couldn't speak. He couldn't. "I said, do you understand me, John Marlowe?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good." She turned. She looked at the children. She looked at Sarah holding the tin box. "Sarah," the widow Hobbs said, "your mama was my Sunday school student 40 years ago in Tennessee. She was the brightest child I ever taught. And she would be so proud of you tonight, child. So proud." Sarah's face crumpled. She ran. She ran across the room to the old woman, and she pressed her face into the widow's shoulder, and the widow Hobbs put one arthritic hand on the back of Sarah's head and held her. And John Marlowe sat in his own front room with 20 of his neighbors looking at him, and his 5 children watching him and his wife's letter against his heart. And he understood finally the thing Mary had been trying to tell him for 11 months. A man does not save his family alone. A man lets his family be saved. "Mrs. Hobbs." "Yes, John." "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't thank me, John Marlowe." "Ma'am." "You raise those 5 children. That's how you thank me. You raise 'em right. You raise 'em to be the kind of folks that ride out at midnight when a neighbor's hurtin'. That's all I ask of you, son. That's all any of us ask." "Yes, ma'am." "Now." The old woman straightened. "Sarah, Maggie, Luke, Liam, Jake, come here all of you. Stand by your daddy." They came. 5 small bodies lined up beside John where he sat. The widow Hobbs looked at all of them. Children. Yes, ma'am, they said. Your mama was my friend, and your mama left this earth too soon. But your mama is not gone from this room tonight. You understand me? Yes, ma'am. She is in every face in this cabin, every man and woman who rode through the dark to be here. She is in your daddy. She is in each of you. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Then it is Father's Day, children. A silence. It is Father's Day, she said again, and your daddy is not alone. He is not alone, children. Do you hear me? Yes, ma'am, Sarah whispered. Good. Now somebody get this man some coffee. And somebody get out the piano money pie Mrs. Henshaw brought before I have to eat it myself. Somebody laughed. It cracked the room open. And John Marlowe, sitting in his own front room with 20 neighbors he had not known he had, with 5 children pressed against him and a tin box of money in his daughter's hands and his wife's letter against his heart. John Marlowe put his face in his hands and finally, after 11 months, let himself be held. The sun came up on a cabin that had not slept. By 6 in the morning, the wagons had begun to move out, some toward home, some toward Fort Smith, and the Marlowe children were curled together on the bench like a litter of pups, all 5 of them, Maggie with her cheek on Luke's hair, and Liam with his arm thrown across Jake's shoulder, and Sarah at the end with her head against the wall, finally asleep. John Marlowe stood at the door and watched the Bar M wagon turn out of his yard with Old Man Holloway and Cassidy, and 4 of the Bar M's hands in the back, and the widow Hobbs riding up beside it on a sorrel mare she had no business riding at 70 years of age. Mrs. Hobbs. John. Ma'am, I should be ridin' with you. You should be sleepin', son. Ma'am. You been ridin' all night, John Marlowe. Your children been awake all night. Your oldest girl is dead on her feet. You sit this one out. Mrs. Hobbs, that man came to my road, and he'll be answerin' to me before the day is done, John. You have my word on it. Ma'am. John. Yes, ma'am. There's something I didn't say last night. Yes, ma'am. The old woman leaned down from the saddle. My Henry was a deputy U.S. Marshal's son. Yes, ma'am, I knew that. And his cousin is a federal judge in Fort Smith. John stared at her. Ma'am. Eldridge Stark may own the Cattleman's Bank, John. He don't own Judge Hobbs. Now you go inside, you let your children sleep, and when they wake up you tell 'em it's Father's Day, and you tell 'em their daddy ain't going nowhere ever again. Do you hear me? He couldn't speak. She nodded once. Drive on, Mr. Holloway. The wagon went. John stood in his own yard and watched a 70-year-old woman ride toward Fort Smith to put a federal judge on a man who had thought he could buy a county, and he took his hat off and held it against his chest for the 2nd time that morning. He went inside. He sat down on the floor in front of the bench where his children slept. He didn't sleep. He just looked at them. He looked at Sarah, and he thought, I see you, baby. I see you now. He looked at Jake, and he thought, you don't gotta be the man no more, son. He looked at Liam, and he thought, you was right. The prodigal come home, and the daddy run out to meet him. He looked at Maggie, and he thought, your mama would say you're the prettiest girl in the territory. And so do I. And he looked at Luke. Luke, who had woken at some point, and was watching his father with his small thumb in his mouth. Daddy? Hey, son. Daddy, did you come back? Yes, son, I came back. For real. For real, Lucas. Mama didn't come back. I know, son. But you did. I did. The boy considered this. He took his thumb out of his mouth. Daddy. Yes, son. Then Mama can come back too. John didn't have words for that. In here. Luke pointed to his own chest. Mama can come back in here. Yes, son. And in here. He pointed to John's chest. Yes, son. And in everybody's here. Yes, son. That's what Sarah said. Sarah said Mama lives in here now, and in here, and in here. Sarah's right, son. Sarah's always right, Daddy. Yeah, son, she is. The boy yawned and went back to sleep. John sat on the floor and watched him sleep. By 8 o'clock, the children were stirring. Sarah was first up, and she was up. Before her eyes were open, she came off the bench reaching for the stove, the way she had reached for it every morning for 11 months, and John caught her wrist gently. "Sarah? Daddy, the fire's gone out, I gotta—" "Sit down, baby." "Daddy." "Sit down, Sarah. I'm making breakfast." She stared at him. "You're making—" "Sit." She sat. "Daddy, you don't know how to make biscuits." "I'm gonna learn, Sarah." "Daddy, the dough will come out wrong. I always do the dough. Then it'll come out wrong, baby. And we'll eat it wrong. And tomorrow I'll do it less wrong. And the day after less wrong than that. Until I learn." "Daddy?" "Sit down, Sarah Marlowe." She sat. She watched him work. She bit her lip every time he did something wrong, which was about every 10 seconds, and twice she half rose to fix what he was doing. And twice he said very gently, "Sit, baby." And twice she sat back down. And by the time he had biscuits in the oven, that were probably the worst biscuits ever made in the Indian Territory, the other children were waking up, and Maggie was rubbing her eyes, and Liam was asking what smelled, and Jake had come up to the table and was looking at his father with something that wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't quite trust either, but it was on the road to it. "Daddy?" "Yes, Jake." "What happened last night?" "Sit down, son, I'll tell you." He told them. He told them all of it. He told them about Holloway and Cassidy and the widow Hobbs riding to Fort Smith. He told them about Henry Hobbs and the federal judge. He told them about the tin box of money. He told them they were keeping the cabin. When he was done, nobody spoke for a long time. Then Maggie said, "Daddy." "Yes, baby." "Are we still doing Father's Day?" He looked at her. He looked at all of them. "Yes, Maggie, we're doing Father's Day. But the presents already give. The present is the best present I ever got, baby. But Father's Day ain't just a present. Father's Day is the whole day. We got the whole day, Maggie. We got the whole day together." "Daddy?" "Yes, baby." "Can we have the honey now?" "Bring the honey, Maggie." She ran behind the curtain and came back with a jar wrapped in a flour sack. She set it on the table like she was setting down the crown jewels of England. "Where'd you get it, baby?" "Mr. Pell's bees, Daddy. Mr. Pell let me help with the bees on Saturdays. He paid me in honey 'stead of money 'cause Sarah said honey'd surprise you better." "Sarah said that?" "Sarah said so." He looked at Sarah. Sarah was looking at the table. "Sarah Marlowe." "Yes, Daddy. You've been running a household and a Father's Day operation and a 5-child resistance movement for 11 months. Daddy, and you 12 years old. Daddy, come here, baby." She came around the table. He pulled her down onto his knee, the way he used to when she was small, and she was too big for it now, all elbows and growing up legs. But she came down anyway, and she put her arms around his neck, and she pressed her forehead against his temple, and she did not cry. She had cried enough. "Sarah." "Yes, Daddy." "You ain't gonna run this house no more." "Daddy, you ain't baby. I'm running this house. I'll do it bad at first. You'll have to teach me where things go. But I'm running it, Sarah. You're a child. You hear me? You're my child, and you're gonna be a child." "Daddy, you're gonna play with Maggie. You're gonna fish with the boys. You're gonna read books, and you're gonna ride that pony Liam keeps begging for. And you're gonna let your hair come out of them tight braids you've been wearing, and you're gonna laugh, Sarah Marlowe. You hear me? You're gonna laugh." "Daddy, please." "I mean it, baby." "Daddy, I don't know how no more." He held her tighter. "Then I'm gonna teach you." She broke against him. It was a different breaking than yesterday. Yesterday she had broken from too much weight. Today she broke from somebody finally taking the weight off. The riders came back at dusk. John was on the porch with Luke on his knee, and Maggie in the dust playing with the Steely, and Liam mending the broken pole at his feet, and Jake at the woodpile chopping kindling. Jake didn't have to chop, but was chopping anyway, because Jake had finally figured out chopping kindling for somebody you loved was a different thing than chopping kindling because you were the only one who would. Sarah was in the cabin asleep. John had told her to lie down for 1 hour. She had been asleep for 5. The Bar M wagon came up the road at a walk, and John could see from a 1/4 mile out that the men in it were sitting straight, and that meant good news, because tired men sit slumped, and these men were sitting straight. Holloway got down first. John. Mr. Holloway. The old man came up to the porch. He was holding a folded paper. John, sit down, son. Sir, I am sittin'. Stand up then. I want you to stand up for this. John stood up. He set Luke gently aside. Sir. Holloway handed him the paper. Read it. It was an order signed by Judge Lemuel Hobbs of the federal court at Fort Smith, halting all foreclosures by the Cattlemen's Bank of Fort Smith, pending an investigation into fraudulent practices and conspiracy to monopolize agricultural land in violation of the laws of the United States. John could not read it the first time. The words wouldn't hold still. He read it the second time. Sir. He froze every note in the county, John, every one, and he ordered Stark held for examination. Held, son. Stark's in the Fort Smith jail tonight. The marshals took him out of his hotel after lunch. Mr. Holloway. Yes, son. What about the back interest? What about my $142? The order halts collection, son. They can't take it, not while the investigation runs. And I expect once Judge Hobbs is done with Eldridge Stark, the Cattlemen's Bank ain't gonna exist anymore. The notes'll get bought by a bigger bank and rewrote on honest terms. You won't owe $1 of the cheat money Stark put in. Just the original principal, and that on terms you can pay. John was holding the paper in both hands. He couldn't move. Daddy? It was Luke. Daddy, are you crying again? Yeah, son, I am. Sad crying or happy crying? Happy crying, son. Oh. Luke considered. I never seen happy crying. I reckon you'll see more of it from now on, son. The widow Hobbs came up onto the porch. She walked stiff. She had ridden 2 days' worth in 12 hours, and she was paying for it in every joint, but her eyes were bright. John. Mrs. Hobbs, I don't know how... Hush, son. Where's Sarah? Sleepin', ma'am. Good. Wake her. Ma'am? Wake her, John. There's something she needs to see. He went inside. He woke Sarah gently, and she came out blinking with Maggie's hand in hers and Liam at her shoulder. The widow Hobbs took the order from John and held it out to the girl. Sarah Marlowe. Yes, ma'am. Read it to your brothers and sisters. Ma'am, I... Read it, child. You was the one figured it out. You read it. Sarah took the paper. Look. She read it. Her voice was small at first. By the end, it wasn't. By the end, it was the voice of a girl who had carried a thing too heavy for too long, and who was setting it down for the first time in a year. When she got to the last line, and the said Eldridge Stark to be held in custody, pending examination, Maggie said very loudly, "What's custody?" Sarah. Jail, Maggie. Oh. Maggie considered. Good. Cassidy laughed first, then Holloway, then the Bar M hands, then John, and then finally Sarah laughed. She laughed the way she hadn't laughed in 11 months. She laughed until she had to sit down. She laughed until Maggie laughed at her laughing, and Luke laughed at Maggie laughing, and Liam laughed at Luke and Jake, who had come around from the woodpile with the axe still in his hand, and tears on his face. Jake laughed too. The widow Hobbs watched the children laugh, and she put her hand on John's arm. John. Yes, ma'am. Your wife is in this porch tonight. Yes, ma'am. She is in every one of those laughing children, John. Yes, ma'am. You was a good husband to her, and you are a good father to them. Don't you ever forget it. He couldn't answer. She squeezed his arm. Now, she said, I am 70 years old, and I have ridden enough horse for one lifetime. Mr. Holloway, would you be so kind as to take me home in your wagon? And John Marlowe, you have a Father's Day to finish. They went. The porch emptied. The dust of the wagons settled, and John Marlowe stood on his porch with his 5 children and the order from Judge Hobbs in his hand, and he looked at all of them, and he said, All right. All right what, Daddy? Liam asked. All right. Let's finish Father's Day. They went inside. Sarah pulled out the box again. The cards came out. The coupon book came out. The mason jar of pennies came out. Luke ran behind the curtain and came back with the steely and pressed it into John's hand and said, "I want you to have it for keeps. Daddy." And Maggie pulled out the honey jar and unscrewed the lid and put a sticky finger directly into her father's mouth, and John laughed with honey in his beard, and the children laughed with him. And Jake? Jake went to the trunk and pulled out one last thing, a small package, brown paper, tied with twine. "Daddy?" "Yes, son?" "This is from me." "Jake, you already give me Father's Day money." "That was earnest money. This is the real present." He handed it over. John untied the twine. It was a hatband, tooled leather, crude, the work of a 12-year-old boy who had taught himself to tool leather by watching the man at the livery. "Jake, it ain't pretty, Daddy." "Son, I've been making it since March, Daddy. I quit on it twice. I didn't think I could finish it. Sarah said keep going. I kept going. It still ain't pretty." "Jake, look at me." The boy looked. "It's the prettiest hatband I ever owned in my life." "Daddy!" "Come here, son." The boy came. John held him. He held him a long time. He felt the boy's shoulders shake, and he didn't tell him to stop because Jake had earned every shake. "Daddy?" "Yes, son." "I thought you didn't love us no more." "Jake, I thought you was gonna leave like Mama did, and not come back." "Jake, look at me." The boy looked. "I am gonna die a Marlowe son. In this house, with y'all, when I am very, very old, and not one day before. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Daddy." "Say it back. You're gonna die a Marlowe, Daddy, in this house, with us, when you're very, very old, and not one day before." "That's right, son." "Daddy." "Yes, Jake. I love you." "I love you too, son." He took the new hatband. He took his old hat off the bench. He pulled the wore-through old hatband off and threw it in the stove. He threaded Jake's leather hatband through the new hat the boy had made. It wasn't pretty. It was the most beautiful thing John Marlowe had ever owned in his life. He put the hat on. "How do I look, son?" "You look like Daddy." "That's the goal, son." The cabin went on like that for a long time. They ate Maggie's honey on whatever stale biscuits John had ruined in the morning. They opened every card again and read each one out loud to each other, and Luke pretended he could read his own card and recited it from memory while pointing at the wrong words. They laughed. They cried a little. They laughed more. Sarah told the story of how she had hidden the box for 11 months under Mary's quilt, and how Maggie had almost given it away in March when she'd asked their father if he liked surprises, and how Liam had threatened to tell because he'd been mad at his daddy and wanted his daddy to know they were saving for him, and how Jake had stopped Liam, and how Sarah had decided that morning at breakfast, when Cassidy had said they split him up, that today was the day. And John Marlowe listened. He listened to every word. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. He just listened and watched his 5 children tell the story of the year their father had been gone from his own house, and how they had built a Father's Day for him anyway, and how they had loved him through it. When the lamp burned low, Maggie climbed into his lap. "Daddy?" "Yes, baby." "What about Cassidy's Mexico drive?" "What about it, baby?" "Are you going?" "No, baby, I ain't going." "What about money, Daddy?" "Mr. Holloway's taken me on permanent at the bar, baby. He told me on the porch tonight. Day shifts only. Home every supper." "Every supper, Daddy." "Every supper, Maggie." "Every bedtime." "Every bedtime." "Every Sunday." "Every Sunday." "Forever." "Forever, baby." She put her small head down on his chest. "Daddy?" "Yes, Maggie." "This is the best Father's Day." "Yes, baby, it is." "Daddy?" "Yes." Mama would say so too. He pressed his face into her hair so she wouldn't see him cry. "Yes, baby, she would." The children fell asleep on him one by one. Maggie first, then Luke curled against his shoulder, then Liam leaning against his arm, then Jake sliding down with his head on John's leg, and finally Sarah, who had fought sleep the longest the way she fought everything, sat down beside him and tucked her bare feet under her and put her head on his shoulder and said very quietly, "Daddy." "Yes, baby. I want to be a child again. You're going to be Sarah. For real. For real, baby, starting tonight. Promise? On your mama's grave." She closed her eyes. "Daddy." "Yes. I love you. I love you, Sarah Marlowe. I love you more than there are stars in the sky." She slept. John Marlowe sat in his cabin with 5 sleeping children pressed against him, and his wife's letter against his heart, and Jake's hatband on his hat, and Luke's steely in his pocket, and Maggie's honey in his beard, and Liam's mended fishing pole at his feet, and Sarah's coupon for 1 daughter folded in his hand, and the order of a federal judge on the table, and a cabin full of Mary's ghost. And Mary's ghost was no longer a thing that haunted him. She was a thing that lived in him now. She lived in him, and she lived in those 5 children, and she lived in every rider who had come through his door that night, and she lived in the widow Hobbs, and old man Holloway, and Cassidy, and the schoolteacher, and the Pells, and every soul in the county who had ridden in the dark for a man they barely knew, because that was the kind of country it was, and that was the kind of woman she had been. He had buried her alone last summer. He would not bury anything alone again. A man does not save his family alone. A man lets his family be saved. A man comes home for supper. A man learns to make biscuits badly. A man wears the hatband his son made him. A man lets his daughter be 12. A man holds the smallest one until the smallest one stops being afraid that going to sleep means somebody won't be there in the morning. And a man who was lost comes home. John Marlowe came home that Father's Day, and he never left his children again. And when he died, 41 years later in the same cabin with Sarah's grandchildren on the porch, and Jake's sons in the yard, and Luke holding his hand at the end, the last words he said were the words his 5-year-old son had said to him on the worst and best day of his life. "Mama can come back. In here, and in here, and in everybody's here." And then John Marlowe went home to his wife, and the country he had helped build went on without him, and the cabin stood, and the children he had raised children of their own, and the love he had thought he had lost turned out to be the only thing in the world that a man can lose and find again. He had been a ghost in his own house for 11 months. He was a father for the rest of his life, and that in the end is the only Father's Day that matters.